Hello everyone and welcome back. It is time for my August and my September reading wrap-up. I have been combining a few wrap-ups because I only put my non-SPFBO stuff in here because there's so many dedicated videos to my SPFBO reads, and through August and September I read six, I think. Yeah, I've got a lot of notes here. 6 books that were non-SPFBO related. Some were on Kindle, some were not. Some I've had physical copies of since. Some I desperately need to get reviews done because people have been asking about it. So the first book I read way back early on in August was Skyward In by Aaliyah Whiteley. Now, Skyward In is a place of safety within the high walls of the Western Protectorate, a place where people can come and tell stories before the War of the Keter. But safety from what? Because the Keter surrendered. Innkeepers Jem and Isley, veterans from both sides of the conflict, have few scars but many regrets. But their peace is disturbed when a visitor known to Isley arrives and asks for help, bringing reminders of an unnerving past and triggering an uncertain future. This was my first read from Aaliyah Whiteley and I really enjoyed it. There is a lot of focus on family and relationships despite this being a futuristic world, and there is a lot of futuristic technology, and this is because the Western Protectorate have isolated themselves from the rest of everyone really. This creates a really interesting contrast, especially when we consider some of the scenes in the past that we spend with the Keter. And in the background of the current day, there is a really interesting increase in tension and the mystery of why all the little settlements are cutting themselves off. I really enjoyed seeing everything come together, and I definitely want to try some more of the work. I gave this one 4 out of 5. My second read of the month was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, and I actually read an e-arc of this, but she has since sent me a physical copy, and I've just dropped my House of Night sticker on the floor. The adopted human daughter of the Nightborn king, Oraya, has carved herself a place in a world designed to kill her. Her only chance of becoming more than prey is to enter the deadly Kijari, a tournament held by the goddess of death herself. But winning won't be easy, fighting against the most vicious warriors of the 3 vampire houses. To survive, Oraya is forced to create an alliance with a mysterious rival. I bloody loved this, but I am going to have to put it down. It is quite a big self-published book, and those tend to be quite heavy. Oraya is my wonderful stabby lady, and she is amazing. She is ambitious and tense, really unable to let down her guard, which is kind of understandable being a human amongst vampires. This world has such a tangibility about it. There is a rich mythology created which is referenced to, and as much care has been taken with the characters. I really enjoyed getting to know them and finding out their histories and their motivations. Filled with action scenes which were well plotted but chaotic when they needed to be, along with a romance that I actually liked that was given the space to be what it needed to be. I gave this 5 out of 5, and I do owe the author a full review, which I'm a little bit behind on, but SPFBO stuff had a bit of a deadline. Next, I read This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. I had seen this hyped so much for so long, and I decided to finally get it. Among the ashes of a dying world, an agent of the Commandant finds a letter. The instructions: burn before reading. Red and Blue, agents from 2 opposing factions of a time war where they are trying to create the best possible timeline for their side, strike up an unusual correspondence. But what started as a taunt turned into something more, something romantic and epic, and something that could change the very past and future. The discovery of their bond will mean their deaths, and someone has to win the war, right? This was a surprisingly dense novella which took me longer to read than I expected because I did not want to miss a single detail. It's absolutely stunning and quite touching, and I suspect it will turn into a 5-star rating upon a reread. This is told in alternating perspectives, obviously the red and the blue, and I really enjoyed the creativity behind their letters and the really quite mind-bending resolution. There really is an amazing amount of story packed into this little novella, and I really want to try some of the author's other works. I did give this a 4 out of 5, but as I said, if I reread this in the future, I suspect it will be a 5 out of 5. The next book I read was a bit of a departure because this was absolutely YA. I don't tend to read so much of that these days, but this has been... Basically, it beats me about the head every time I go on Amazon. It comes up as a recommendation, and this was Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley. Tamsin, the most powerful witch of her generation, is exiled and cursed with the inability to love. She must steal it from others. Wren is a source, someone who is made of magic but unable to use it. Sources are required to go and train at the Coven, but Wren has been hiding her abilities in order to care for her sick father. When a magical plague ravages the land and Wren's father falls victim, she offers Tamsin a proposition: help her find the one responsible, and she will give up her love for her father. So as I said, this has been recommended to me so much, I thought I would just give it a go. I'm not perhaps the target audience for it, but I thought, why not? It would make a change to what I was reading. The story was interesting, if a little too foreshadowed at times. The forbidden magic aspect was a little bit underdeveloped and by far the most interesting aspect of the magic in this book. Tamsin is moody and prickly, and Wren is really quite passive until she decides that perhaps she would like to stab people instead. She did have a bit more development throughout this than anyone else, but I really lost track of how many times she walked into Tamsin because she wasn't paying attention and Tamsin had to stop walking. I guess we're back to I'm so clumsy, young adult protagonists again, which is not anything I've really ever enjoyed. Rating this one is a little bit difficult because as I said, I'm not the target audience anymore. 16-year-old me would have devoured this book until it fell apart and read it and reread it and read it, and I would have loved it. A mainstream published sapphic romance where it was just treated as part of normality. I would have loved it. 40-year-old me, I've just read a bit more. Yeah, I gave it 2 out of 5. It's perhaps a little bit unfair. As I said, I'm not really the target audience for it anymore. Next was perhaps my most anticipated read, and people are still asking me for the review. It is coming. As I said, I just had SPFBO stuff to catch up on, and it's kind of fell behind that. It is coming soon, I promise. That's Fairy Tale by Stephen King. So this was released in September, and I read it pretty much straight away. So Charlie Reed looks like a normal high school kid, but he is carrying a heavy load. When he was 10 years old, his mum was killed in a hit-and-run accident, and the grief drove his father to drink. When Charlie is 17, he meets a dog named Radar and her owner, Howard Bowditch, a recluse who lives in the big house at the top of the street. Charlie starts doing jobs for Mr. Bowditch and loses his heart to Radar. And when Mr. Bowditch dies, he leaves a tape cassette to Charlie, telling him all about the portal to the other world hidden in the shed. Again, I'm going to have to put this one down. That's quite a heavy one. I have been looking forward to this one since the announcement, and I've got to admit it is my favourite recent Stephen King release. I'm not going to go too much into it because obviously a full review will be coming. It is Dark Tower adjacent, but if you haven't read any of the Dark Tower, don't worry about it. This is more Easter eggs, which are just going to add to your enjoyment if you have read the Dark Tower. But if you haven't read it, there's not a lot that you're going to miss. As is usual, we spend a lot of time getting to know the characters before we really get into the meat of the story. We do have some, let's just say, what are becoming standard Stephen King tropes at this point. He is bad at writing modern technology. I just accept that now. It's just part of the writing. Speaking of the writing, this is written in this world by Charlie. This is pretty standard of his most recent ones. The person is looking back and telling the story. Also, heavy themes of alcoholism and recovery. It is a little less brutal than some of his most recent offerings. It doesn't really come to the same level as The Outsider or Billy Summers, for example, but there is still plenty of murder and gore within. The main thing I really enjoyed was that this seemed to be more of a love letter to the darker side of fairy tales, which is definitely an interesting theme running throughout this one. I gave it 4 out of 5, and as I said, review will be coming soon. And the final book I read this month, why am I reading so much romance at the moment? Am I going soft? Is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I wanted something that was going to be a little bit easier to digest because I had finished my SPFBO stuff and I had a lot of videos to make, and I wanted something that I could read and just enjoy and be perhaps a little bit soothing. And I've been told that this one was just nice, and it was. Ever since she was cursed by fairy, Theodora Ettings has no real feelings of fear or embarrassment, which can lead to accidental scandal. Dora, as she prefers to be known, is hoping to be a quiet and sensible wallflower in London during this season. But after the strange, handsome and utterly uncouth Lord Sorcier discovers her condition, she is drawn into dangerous and peculiar fairy affairs. This was honestly what I needed at the time. It is the first part of a trilogy. This is the Regency Fairy Tales series. Dora is really an interesting protagonist to follow. She knows she doesn't feel the same way as others, and it was interesting watching her navigate the world knowing that. Also frustrating how some people reacted and treated her. I really loved the setting of this one. I haven't really read much in the Regency period, and I loved the grand balls, and the descriptions were wonderful, even down to the workhouses where you just feel the utter injustice of everything. All the descriptions were wonderful. I even enjoyed the romance, and I'm really wondering if I'm just getting soft these days. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the trilogy. My copy includes the Lord Sorcier short story, which serves to flesh out his character somewhat. Some of the events that are referred to in the main story are included in this short story, and I really think it helps flesh him out and make him more present in the world. I gave this 4 out of 5. So this ended up being long and rambly, although it might not be by the time I've edited it down, but I've got to go and do that now so I can upload it tonight. That was the last of my combined reading months. October onwards will be normal, and I'm really interested to know what you have been reading recently. So thanks for watching, and I shall see you all soon.